John Brophy and Don Perry had all intentions of starting the fight with their hands taped up. Now, be it here or there, Jackie LeClaire didn't want no part of that game and took his club off and never came back.
10 days later, LeClaire was suspended indefinitely by Eastern Hockey League President Tom Lockhart. New Haven was also fined $100 and ordered to replay the game in Comac on February 12th. After learning of the decision, Nathan Podoloff, general manager of the Blades, said his team would not play the rematch and that LeClaire would continue as player coach until an appeal was heard. Meanwhile, before the rescheduled game on February 12th, the Ducks and Blades would play 2 more times. First, the Ducks traveled to New Haven to play a game on February 2nd. The Blades failed to make good on their threat to play suspended player coach Jackie LeClaire, and the Ducks defeated the Blades 3-1 in a mild game. The only trouble came when the New Haven fans showered the Ducks with several dozen raw eggs as they left the ice. On February 7th, the Eastern Hockey League Board of Governors upheld the suspension of Jackie LeClaire, and the Blades once again stated they would not play the rematch on February 12th. Blades owner Nathan Podoloff also said he would file suit in federal court for a restraining order against the league's suspension of LeClaire. On February 11th, the Blades showed up at Comac for a scheduled contest a day before the much-anticipated makeup game. Again, the game was uneventful, with the Ducks crushing the Blades 9-2.
The team showed up, they come out for the warm-ups for the game, and Blake Wall led the team out. They were all carrying umbrellas because they didn't want to get beer thrown on them from the fans, and it was quite a sight, and I'll never forget that day.
The following night, the Blades kept their promise and failed to show up for the makeup game. With lawsuits looming, Al Barron and Nathan Podoloff met on February 18th. Podoloff agreed to reimburse the Ducks for expenses resulting from the incomplete game of January 21st and the non-appearance of the Blades for the league-ordered makeup game February 12th. Podoloff also agreed to make up the game on March 1st. The game was finally played and the Ducks won 4-1. A few fights broke out, but most penalties were of the minor variety. With the New Haven incident behind them, the Ducks went on to clinch the Northern Division title. The playoffs started with the Ducks sweeping the Blades 3-0 in the first round. Led by goalie Gordon Dibley, the Ducks ousted the Clinton Comets 4-1 in the following round of the playoffs. That set the scene for the Ducks to play Nashville in the finals in a rematch of the previous season's Walker Cup. The Ducks were swept from the finals, making Nashville the Walker Cup champions. The Ducks opened the 1966-67 season with a new player coach, 34-year-old Gene Timichuk. On February 19, 1967, in a game against the Clinton Comets at the Long Island Arena, the Ducks held a special day for popular defenseman John Brophy. During the second intermission, Pat Kelly, player-coach of the Comets, was the first to speak, praising Brophy as one of the finest players in the Eastern Hockey League. Former player-coach John Muckler then offered his words, followed by Ducks captain Don Perry. Then Al Barron, at his own insistence, was the last to speak, introducing Brophy to the crowd. Brophy skated to center ice and spoke to the fans, proclaiming them the greatest hockey fans in the world. Among the gifts given to Brophy were a camera, a gold watch, a tape recorder, and 15 cases of beer.
The day that John Brophy was finally honored here back in February of 1967 was a day that I guess, you know, all the Long Island hockey fans will remember, because I think people could identify with John Brophy. He was not the biggest man. He wasn't a huge defenseman. He was a guy that fans here on Long Island certainly took to their hearts. He was an enemy certainly elsewhere around the Eastern Hockey League and got booed everywhere he went and got involved in fights, and fans hated him. But here on Long Island, people loved him, and that was a very special day when he was honored.
After the ceremonies, the Ducks, already ahead 5-0, took to the ice for the third period. With 2 more goals in the third, one by Wayne Kitchen, his 4th of the game, and another by Bobby Brown, the Ducks cruised to a 7-2 victory. It was a mild game, with Brophy failing to draw a single penalty from referee Ted Daly. After finishing in 4th place in the Northern Division, the Ducks faced Clinton in the first round of the playoffs. But the Comets proved to be too strong, sweeping them 3-0 in the best-of-5 series. An on-ice incident on December 17, 1967, involving John Brophy and referee Bill Pringle was the talk of the season. Brophy was suspended for the balance of the season for shoving Pringle to the ice in a game at Comac. While Brophy served his suspension, Al Barron fired player-coach Gene Timichuk and hired Brophy as his team's coach.
I can remember the first day of training camp coming in with Brophy, as tough as he is, and at that time, not too many people were in great shape, and they came into a practice where we were doing knee drops. It was probably the hardest training camp I ever participated in all my years of hockey.
Brophy would also coach part of the 1968-69 season. During the season, Brophy requested his release and was traded to New Haven, with Les Calder becoming the interim coach. The Ducks finished in 4th place with a 29-36-7 record and lost to Clinton again in the first round of the playoffs, 3-0. The next several seasons were not very productive for the Ducks. In the 1969-70 season, the Ducks missed the playoffs after finishing 5th in the division. In September of 1970, the Ducks signed a 2-year lease with the Long Island Arena with an eye on the Nassau Coliseum in future years. In October of 1970, the Ducks reacquired John Brophy from New Haven in exchange for Dwight Winters. In November of '71, Al Barron was prepared to go to court to prevent a New York Ranger-owned American Hockey League franchise being awarded to the new Nassau Coliseum. In early November, the Ducks released 38-year-old John Brophy. In March of 1972, Nassau Coliseum officials announced that the facility would only be used for Major League Baseball and hockey. The Ducks played the 1972-73 season at the Long Island Arena. For the Long Island Ducks of the Eastern Hockey League, this season would be their last.
I think the Ducks did so much for hockey here at Long Island, but for those of us who grew up with this building and with this hockey team, I don't think we'll ever be tired of it.
Although the Ducks are now just a part of hockey history, there's one thing that all former Duck players agree on.
It's great to have been a Long Island Duck.
Upon the conclusion of the 1972-73 season, the 39-year-old Eastern Hockey League folded. Among those teams ceasing operations was the Long Island Ducks, a very popular team established in 1961. With the demise of the Ducks, minor league hockey on Long Island was thought to be a thing of the past. But a new era in Long Island hockey was about to begin. The North American Hockey League was formed on May 1st, 1973, with 4 charter members: the Binghamton Dusters, Cape Cod Cubs, Johnstown Jets, and Mohawk Valley Comets. 3 weeks later, Long Island was granted a franchise called the Cougars after signing a working agreement with the Chicago Cougars, a team in the 2-year-old World Hockey Association. Coached by legendary Ducks defenseman John Brophy, the Cougars played their first regular season game at the Long Island Arena in Comac on October 12, 1973, defeating Cape Cod 5-1. Jerry Andriata was the hero on opening night with a 2-goal performance. Despite an impressive 27-9-1 home record, fan support was a problem the first season. Playing in an arena that held over 4,000 people, the Cougars sometimes reported paid crowds as low as 500. Sparked by Lon Rombo's 50 goals and 42 assists, and a stingy defense led by captain Jim Pritchard and first-team All-Star Wally Olds, the Cougars finished 3rd in the league. After advancing through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, the Cougars faced the regular season champion Syracuse Blazers in the finals. Long Island fell behind in the series 3-0 and faced a seemingly impossible task of taking Game 4 in Syracuse to keep the series alive. With the score tied 1-1 midway through the first, the Blazers erupted for 3 unanswered goals. The Cougars were unable to overcome the deficit and lost the game 8-2, getting swept from the finals. After the victory, the Blazers were presented with the Lockhart Trophy, equivalent to the Stanley Cup, awarded to the North American Hockey League's playoff champion.
Syracuse had a great team, but I don't know if, I guess when you get swept, you're not putting out a great effort, but I couldn't see that anybody let down. They had a great team. They were fortunate enough to win the first 2 games in Long Island, and we went into their building. They had a very physical, tough team, and so did we. We wouldn't got the finals, but they beat us. Yeah, they swept us.
The Cougars started the 1974-75 season with a new head coach, Ron Reset. Despite solid goaltending from first-team All-Star Rich Kutsu and strong checking, the second season was not nearly as productive as the first. The Cougars started this season 17-11-2, but a number of call-ups to the parent Cougars of the World Hockey Association decimated the team, causing them to win only once in a 15-game span during December and January. In one dismal stretch, the Cougars won only 3 times in 26 games, contributing to their 29-40-5 record and 7th place finish. Dave Walter led all Cougars in scoring that season with 38 goals for 80 points. Strengthened by the return of early season sensation Peter Mara from the WHA, the Cougars upset the expansion Philadelphia Firebirds in the first round of the playoffs. The Firebirds finished second in the regular season, going 40-31-3. In the semifinals, the Cougars took a 3-1 lead over the heavily favored Binghamton Dusters, but were unable to capture the necessary 4th victory to win the series, losing the next 3 games, including a heartbreaking overtime loss at home in Game 6. Meanwhile, the Chicago Cougars were struggling to stay afloat in the WHA due to dwindling attendance and eventually ceased operations in April of 1975. Faced with no parent club for the upcoming 75-76 season and poor home attendance, the Long Island Cougars franchise shifted to Pennsylvania, becoming the Erie Blades. Minor league hockey on Long Island was left to the history books after the Cougars failed to stay.